I am honored. We have a guest here today. Her name is Elsa Ramon. She is an Emmy award-winning journalist, and she is the CEO and co-founder of SentTV, which is an upcoming platform and channel where viewers can access the latest, most reliable crypto developments on a single consolidated medium. So, uh, Elsa, thank you so much for joining us, and you know, participating with us today to talk about your platform and some of the projects that you were working on. So, could you tell us what is SentTV?
First of all, hi everyone. Christopher and Adam, thank you guys so much, by the way, for asking me to be with you. I've been watching what you guys are doing, so
Thank you.
it's nice to be part of your efforts as well. So thank you. I'm humbled and honored to be here. CentTV, by the way, stands for Crypto Entertainment News Television, but that really doesn't reveal the entire goal that we have at CentTV. My background is 21 years working for all the television networks here in the United States. And I've had a great career, and I'm extremely grateful for all the experiences that I had. But the last 5 to 7 years that I was in the news media business, I started to feel like things were just not going the way they should be. When I started as a reporter, like 800 years ago.
Oh,
um,
come
uh,
on.
we got into it to be of a service. That was at a time when there were plenty of consumer reporters, investigative reporters, political reporters. There were people who had specialized beats. And there were people who focused on those communities to be able to get them help and get justice and get answers. And those were the days that I felt when I was a little kid watching the news with my parents that was what I wanted to do because I wanted to help people and be of a service. But towards the end of my career, I just felt like honestly ridiculous because um, I'm from Los Angeles, born and raised, and I finished out my career here at home, which I was very lucky to do. I was working for CBS in Los
Yeah.
Angeles. And, if you know what the news is like in LA, it's a lot of car chases, which, although are exciting for a lot of people, um, that really ultimately doesn't help people. And, we got to a point where we're sending reporters out to stand in the rain and by a tree that is blocking the road because the weather's bad. And these things started to become apparent to me that clickbait uh, became king and sensational stories rather than things that had any kind of value. And maybe there was a nugget of value in something, but it just got away from that type of storytelling and it just became meaningless to the point where I just started feeling really embarrassed. Like,
Yeah.
what am I doing here? And so I wanted to leave, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a passion for anything else. And it wasn't until I learned about blockchain technology and cryptocurrency and the emergent tech that I was like, wow, I know what I'm going to leave for. So, but Scent TV wasn't born right away. I thought I'd start a show. So my partner and I, who is in Atlanta, started shooting a show called Adventures in Crypto. And I thought, okay, we're gonna put together the show, and I'm gonna see if the networks will start opening their eyes to this kind of content and this genre and this thing called cryptocurrency. And I realized there's just no way in hell they just aren't ready. And
Yeah.
even today, you can see their coverage, right? If I'm correct, and I've talked with you before, is really all about chasing the price and reading the tea leaves as far as investing and all that kind of stuff. So when I realized this wasn't going to be the pathway, and spinning my wheels and trying to beg networks to air this kind of content, I thought, you know what? Why am I doing this? We don't need them. Why don't we just create our entire platform that is entirely dedicated to what all of us in this space, emergent technology space, uh, are creating and discovering and showing. So I'm really trying to front run them, the
Right.
networks, and take this route. And that's how SentTV was born.
That's incredible, and I think you summarized it quite nicely as far as I think the way modern news has transformed into this clickbait type of culture, or this clickbait kind of machine, so to say. So, and I think you also pointed out a great point how a lot of times when it comes to cryptocurrency and blockchain coverage, it is chasing prices or at least covering that. So it almost seems like there's a part of the industry that is going in that direction, because even if you look at influencers, you look at other you could say startups that are trying to do that, it is price chasing. Where's Bitcoin going today? Where's Ethereum going today? And it's so much broader, and it's so much more dynamic than that as far as what's going on in this space. But before we get a little bit more into blockchain, you, with your extensive and beyond impressive career in journalism, at what point did you feel like the news got past the point of no return right now? So we have the clickbait
Mm.
culture. You kind of see the clickbait culture, the distortions, kind of the 24/7 alarmist type of environment where everything is an emergency. And I think as far as what actually goes on, even in the United States, we're maybe only seeing 5 or 10%. And maybe at least 8% of that might be accurate, so to say, if we're comparing this to maybe the scope of 10% of news that goes on. So for you, when did you feel like, okay, we're at the point of no return in what we call of as the news? This isn't going to go back to, let's say, better times when maybe, let's say, maybe there was a little bit more depth, maybe a little bit more search for the nuances and things like that.
I would say that I hit that point maybe in the late 2000s. And I started to see, I mean, people would argue that the red flags were there long before that, and they were. But if we're talking about me personally, spending my life and giving everything to that career, when it occurred to me, when we would pitch stories that would be of service or really great stories to tell, and it just wasn't what our editors and producers wanted, because I mean, honestly, it wasn't going to give that pop, that draw of people going, "Oh my god, I have to see this," the clickbait stuff.
Right.
And it became very frustrating as a storyteller to, start to become the face of that more sensationalized stuff that maybe had a nugget of what was important versus, listening to the people in our community who would reach out to us and say, "Hey, we've got stories in our neighborhood. We've got these problems. We've got, this going on." And, those stories were overlooked because they just weren't sexy enough. And, at what point, I just started to feel like, well, then we're just not a service anymore. And it became about appeasing shareholders and those of us in the newsroom who really just went to work to do our jobs and you can tell these stories, slowly over the years, watched our resources being taken away. We saw, the investigative units being broken down and completely, gone from newsrooms. Consumer units in the newsrooms, those are the reporters who would tell the stories of somebody who tried to get a service and they didn't get their money's worth and they got, taken advantage of. And, those units slowly disappeared. The money that we counted on in the newsroom to do longer form stories or more in-depth stuff, the money for that just started drying up. And we're left with chasing weather and covering car chases.
Yeah.
Now, I can't say that's, it's not fair to say that's 100% of what it is, but it's certainly definitely the at the forefront to get people in, because after all, corporate media is a business. And and I guess at the end of the day, the bottom line is what matters, and they'll do what they have to
Right.
do to make that.
That's that. Yeah, that's an incredible point to say the least. And I have to say, I will watch news and let's say what we know of as the major stations or the major platforms and whatnot, and I still leave with the feeling where I don't really know what's going on still. And even I think like many people, I still walk away with this deep feeling of like cynicism. Like, okay, is this actually what's going on? Let me go on Google. Let me see, like, let me actually look this up myself and do my due diligence. And I think news should be both informative and convenient as well. Like, I should be able to really turn on or access a reporter or platform, whether it's streaming or on TV, and be like, okay, this is what's going on. Great. This is what I need to know right now. So for you, when did you start feeling that even blockchain started going, maybe not all of it, but there's a part of it that leans towards this clickbaity type of culture where you just see, okay, the inflammatory Bitcoin price movements all week, and you'll see influencers do it, you'll see other blockchain news stations doing it. When did you notice that? Because I'm sure for you it's a little bit of like deja vu. It's like, okay, you come just right out of journalism, investigative journalism. Now you're going into blockchain. You're like, okay, I see a little bit of the writing on the wall here.
Well, I think I did go in with a real, at least an open mind and being realistic. After I had that epiphany, that aha moment, and just seeing the potential of what could happen with the emergent technology that we're all learning about and experiencing, I at least wasn't naive to the fact that people still have businesses, whether it's corporate media or in the blockchain industry or whatever industry. And there are going to be people who really just want to make a quick buck. There are people who are willing to, have their face attached to projects for money, whether or not they know or believe in the project. So, I mean, that's going to happen in any industry. So, to say that every company and every project in this space is a scam and it's all eventually going to be a rug pull, I just don't find that realistic at all. I have encountered so many people who are really trying to build things that are going to be life changing technologies moving forward. So not but it comes with the territory where there's money to be made. There are
Sure.
going to be people who are going to take advantage of those who don't know very much of what they're getting into, and there are going to be people willing to attach their name and likeness to those projects to make their portion of it. And sayonara, see you later. But it happens with stocks. It happens again
Right.
wherever there's money to be made.
Right. So for you, what was your aha moment, or when did the light bulb click on when I think you realized blockchain is it? This is what I want to do a deep dive in. This is what I want to pursue as a worthwhile and you could say disruptive project in business. Because I feel like everybody, every guest on our show, and even myself and Chris, we kind of all have a story about how we initially got interested in blockchain. So I kind of wanted to hear, especially coming from your background, how did that come about? Like, how did you end up finding blockchain, or how did blockchain find you, so to say?
I think it found me because I mean, it even surprised me, that epiphany, because as you and I have talked before, and as I've explained, that I am nowhere near what would be considered a person who is in tech. I'm not a techie. I'm not a coder. I'm not a developer. I was horrible at math. I had to have tutors in math all the way through high school. I was a lit major when I went to UC Irvine here in Southern California. And I spent my career, 20 years, being a creative, a writer, a producer, a presenter, an anchor. I mean, I couldn't be further away from that entire world. And because that just not wasn't my nature, it wasn't my interest, but I also found it very intimidating because it just was so confusing to me. It wasn't something I felt that I was built to understand. And it wasn't until I had met some new friends and they were in the cryptocurrency space, and they invited me to come to an informational panel to educate people about Bitcoin and blockchain, and for people to come and ask questions and all that kind of stuff. It was a couple of investors who are friends, and they wanted to teach people. And most of the people who were there were asking questions about, how do I make money? How do I invest in this? It was all about the
Right.
money. But as I sat there and listened to each one of the presenters speak, it just clicked. I mean, I started looking around the room like, are you guys getting what the potential is here with this technology? I mean, but everyone was there for the money, and I just couldn't. I mean, not that that's a bad thing. We all have the right to make a living and want to do as well as we
Right.
possibly can. I would never vilify anybody for, trying to amass their own personal wealth and take care of their families. We have the right to do that here. But I really felt like that's where a lot of people had stopped at that particular event. And I just saw this in terms of a story, because that's how my brain works. I see things in terms of stories. How will this resonate with people? How do you tell this story so that people will give a damn? And
Right.
I could see it right away. And the potential, the stories are endless. It's like, it's like a reporter's dream. It's like fish in a barrel. Pick one. It's really incredible to watch this space evolve. And I've only been in it for 3 years, and I feel still like I know nothing. And I try to read stuff every day. I do read stuff every day, and I really wish I could just spend all day, every day reading and learning.
Right.
But it's tough, and I always feel like I'm running and trying to learn, and I'm sure a lot of people who are in the space feel the same way. It'd be great to just sit and learn all day, right?
Right. Right. So for you, right now, what do you find the most newsworthy in blockchain?
Well, I feel like, well, a couple of things, not just necessarily blockchain itself. The whole purpose of SentTV is not just about crypto. I have found over the last couple of years that I've been here that there's an intersection where all of these, what would be considered disruptive technologies, cross. And what we want to offer on SentTV is a glimpse and content in all of these genres. And I'm talking about not just blockchain and cryptocurrencies, digital assets. I'm talking about financial literacy, AI, VR, AR, gaming, NFTs, esports. I feel like all of these worlds cross paths, and we're on this cosmic collision course to of all of these things that really can help us, especially financial literacy, and started to learn about. Um, we can at Sent TV become that place that is of a service again, and not just nut information and clickbait. Of course, we want to tell the stories. Of course, we want to attract people to our platform. But we want to be a franchise service where nobody else, you're not going to. I got you guys.
Cut out just a little bit there. If you can just
Oh,
repeat that last little part.
I'm so sorry about that. I didn't know. Anyway, yeah, but we feel like we want to be that place that is of service again, with Sent
Yes.
TV. So we want to be a place where if people come to us, you're not wasting your time, waiting for some coverage of something that's really not going to impact your life one way or another.
Right. So this is a very ambitious project, I have to say. Really having the respectable brand of news in this space. So what was it like starting this company? Like, what was that process like? What were some of the obstacles you faced? Perhaps putting this together, or even maybe feedback, or maybe things you've experienced pitching
Yeah.
it to perhaps investors.
Okay, so if I'm being totally honest, the biggest barrier was my family,
Wow.
because you have to understand that uh, my mom was 15 when she had me, 17 when she had my brother, and 21 when she had my sister. And for her, my career in television news and winning Emmys and being on the air in Los Angeles was a source of pride for her.
Oh
But
yeah.
she also didn't know how unhappy I was for the last, part of my career, and how much that life owns you. It is 24/7. I had children. There were nights I got 4 to 5 hours of sleep, where I'd come home after a newscast and have to get back up again and get them ready for
Wow.
school. It was just, it's really madness living that life. And I was a single mom, and so there were just a lot of things, plus where I was mentally with this career, and where
Right.
media was going. It was just all piling up, and nobody really knew how truly unhappy I was. And so for my parents, they were just like, "What in the heck are you doing? I mean, oh my God, we made these sacrifices for you, and you did it, and you had this career, and now you're leaving, and putting all your stuff in storage and downsizing, and because the fact of the matter is that I made a lot of money in television news, and now that was not going to be there. And so, but I left on my convictions and my principles, and what I believe to be much more rewarding on the other side of what were going to be tough times trying to start
Right.
a company, which I had never done in my life. So that was the biggest challenge. They're still not convinced. My parents are really tough cookies, and very old school. So until it's super real and in their faces, but I get it. I get how they are. They
Right.
just, but we this idea was born and created and built out during the lockdown. So, I spent a lot of time with my partner, who is the founder of SentTV, Dean Kirkland, and I was at home in my jammies with messy hair on top of my head and no makeup, and it was just, I mean, the way we all kind of were during lockdown, in sweats and
Right.
jammies and all that, and kind of that's when the whole concept kind of took shape, and we realized we need this.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I'm sure your parents are going to come around, especially I think at the pace that blockchain technology is just becoming so every day for all of us. It seems, slowly but surely, it's here to stay. When you were putting this together, as far as maybe some of the tech behind it, did you have any specific platforms in mind, as far as setting this up, having this run reliably, and having this also transparent too? Having essentially a blockchain news that has the transparency that, let's say, traditional news would not have.
Yeah, so one of the areas of programming that we are going to have on the platform, in addition to all those genres that I had mentioned before, we will have industry centric newscast once a day at least, when we start, to talk about the developments of the day in this industry and in this space. And I'm not talking about trying to emulate the Bloombergs and the CNBCs of the world. I'm talking
Right.
about the major developments in the space and in all those genres, um, and without any of the other stuff that clutters a newscast. So we want to be of service that way, at least to give people the headlines during a newscast of some things that they can go check out for themselves, the big news of the day. As far as a platform, um, I am working right now and looking. What we want to do is, of course, be a 24/7 service. We need the capabilities to be able to have satellite uplinks to be able to also get content from creators who we want on our channel to be able to uplink their content for air. So, of course, in Los Angeles, there's not a shortage of these types of facilities that some
Right.
come turnkey, you know what I mean? So, but all of this comes at a price. So we're at a point now that we've got the concept going. We've got people signing, content creators signing letters of intent to show their interest, people that I've kind of kept my eye
Awesome.
on for the last couple of years. And we're getting to that point now where we want to present our business plan and deck and say, here's what we need to get that studio to start getting this stuff on the air 24/7.
That's awesome. So, from the perspective of a journalist and as a entrepreneur, what's your feeling about NFTs right now? It's a very hot subject matter, and even within the crypto community, there is still a fair amount of skepticism, if not cynicism, towards NFTs and maybe what their perceived value is.
I think a healthy amount of skepticism and criticism, you got to have some of that. But
Yeah.
the short answer right now, it's like a hot and heavy romance right now, the way I see NFTs. It's
Right.
I think things are, it's on fire right now, and it's great and it's crazy. And all of these artists are expressing themselves and able to take control of their own destinies without having somebody else, basically have them on strings like a puppet. It's allowing freedom, and it's showing and displaying to people that there is a different way to be able to be creative and support yourself. And it's great. I think the innovation is outstanding, but I also think right now it's like crazy. And I
Right.
think at some point, like anything else, things will level out. But I think NFTs and tokenization, stuff like that, that stuff's here to stay. I think cooler heads eventually will prevail, and people will start researching more, and before they take these leaps into these types of projects. But I believe they're here to stay.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I am very curious to see where NFTs are going to be within the next 5 years. You look at anywhere from art galleries to gaming to
Yeah.
music, pictures. Even just JPEGs alone. It seems like
Who would have thought, right?
yeah,
JPEGs.
yeah, JPEG. It's finding its way into all these little crevices in parts of society, even things that I think are pretty unexpected. As far as SentTV, so how many programs are you looking to have? I because I know you're covering like many different subsets of tech and blockchain and crypto. So can you tell us maybe a little bit about the programming that may be coming up in the near future?
Well, I mean, we of course want to get as much quality, vetted content that we can get in all of those particular categories. We plan to be 24/7, so we've got a lot of time and space to fill, and it all depends on what people can, provide. Do you want a 15-minute show, or does a company want to in the industry want to run a 10-minute ad? Does a creator want to have a 1-hour show once a week? I mean, these are all programming things that we really have to sit down and figure out. But right now, we're just trying to onboard people, and if I'm being honest, we're just being born, and we're taking baby steps. So
Right.
as long as what we get right now is quality, vetted, and trusted information, we'll go with what we have, and we'll continue to build on that, and we'll evolve. Because I've got to be honest with you, I've never been here before, and I'm going up against a lot of companies and an
Yeah.
industry. So it's, I don't want to use the David and Goliath cliche example. In a way, it is, but in a way, it's not, because we're not directly competing with our programming. You're not going to find this kind of programming on any of the major mainstream networks.
Right. And I have a question too. So it seems like now, even as we speak, a lot of mainstream television news programs are still providing very little coverage to blockchain and cryptocurrency. So, for me, it's almost like, is it that they don't get it? Or do you think they're still really protecting maybe some of the status quo that we all have? Because sometimes I'm a little surprised. It's, like I said, you turn on any of the major ones, and I see next to no coverage on this stuff.
Or just, Bitcoin fell 10%
Exactly.
today. That's the big story of the day. Well, I can tell you just from my experience that um, it's not so much that they have the corporate heads going, oh, don't cover this because it's a threat to our livelihood. It's more of ignorance,
Okay.
and not spending the time to get in front of these stories, to dedicate the resources, meaning reporters and producers and people who are really interested in this space and learning about this space and are able to craft stories and produce stories and drive that part of the coverage within their newsroom. They're not dedicating money to that. I mean, if we're talking outside of like the CNBC or Bloomberg's, but even with the programming and the coverage I see with them, it's a lot of the same formula that happens in a lot of newsrooms. It's chase, chase, chase when there's something shiny and waving over here.
Right.
It's never getting in front of it and owning it from day one. And, a
I like
year
that.
from
Getting in
now,
front of it. Yeah.
and a year from now saying, we as a newsroom have been covering this industry for a year now, this emerging industry for a year now. We've made all of the contacts. Our contacts trust our reporters. Our contacts trust our producers. It's, you've got that kind of stuff takes time and it takes trust. And it's not what corporate media or any of the mainstream newsrooms really care to invest in right now. And I'm one person who spent over 20 years in this industry, and that's my opinion. I'm not alone, but I can't speak for everybody.
Right. Of course. And coming up through journalism and accomplishing what you have, who would you name as far as journalists and other reporters that really inspired you to pursue your craft and master it? And even I guess you could say people who have essentially put the fire in you, so to say, listen, I'm going to pursue reporting and I'm going to become awesome at this. Like, do certain names come to mind or certain faces come to mind?
Absolutely. Well, I'd say I don't know. He wasn't considered a journalist, but I feel like he really dedicated a lot of time and efforts to learning about everything he came across. So I'm just fascinated by anything that he did. As far as traditional journalists, I would say when I was growing up, I always thought Katie Couric was such a great balance, at the time when I was growing up in high school and in college, of somebody who had a great personality, but also really connected with people. And I liked that about her a lot. If we're talking locally, I grew up in Los Angeles and I watched a lot, people in the country won't know who this is because it's LA local news, but one of the reporters, he's just one of those old school, nose to the grindstone, ear to the ground, kind of those old gumshoe reporters. And his name is Conan Nolan. And when I was in college, he took me under his wing as an intern. And to this day, he's still on the air, and he is just as pure as you can get as far as covering stories and being a service to people. So he knows this. I've told him this a bazillion times. And when I made it back home to LA, and we would find ourselves sometimes on the same story. when I, um, that was really a trip because I was his intern in college, and then fast forward all these years later, I'm back in LA and anchoring the news and reporting the news, and I'm finding myself at some of the same stories that my mentors are at.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, I'll defer to Chris in the meantime. I know he's had a bunch of questions to ask as well. So,
Of
uh,
course.
Chris, floor is yours.
Yeah, no, it was, thank you so much. It was great listening to how it developed and how you started the company. I had just a couple questions and then just a little bit to recap on some of what you spoke about was, so the competition out there for crypto companies is really not like a 24-hour television show, but there is Cointelegraph, there's CoinDesk. Besides, the 24-hour aspect, what would be the main differentiator that would set you apart from like what's traditionally known out there right now and is kind of set the tone? So what kind of differentiates you from that when you like say you're going to an investor to get that money for the studio and they ask a question similar to this, like what's differentiating you from that?
Well, first of all, a lot of respect to Cointelegraph. John Rice, who at the time when I met him was managing editor. Those guys work so hard, and the coin desks of the world and all of these crypto media companies that are popping up, they see it too, and they're all working just as hard to inform everybody and give people the tools to learn and continue their journeys down this rabbit hole, right? The difference between us and them, aside from the obvious, which would be the visual medium, I'm a visual storyteller. I feel so constrained having to write for a paper or magazine because I'm so used to using pictures and human stories and seeing expressions and faces and hands and having those things help tell the story. So aside from us being a visual medium, there's an emphasis on the word and entertainment in our name: crypto entertainment news television. Uh, I feel like there are great stories in all of the media companies that we do have today that tell great stories. But I feel a lot of the information out there right now is clinical, skews clinical. You're learning about something and you're reading it, and for me, that's hard to focus on and absorb it. Um, I feel the programming that we are going to have is going to tell these types of stories in an entertaining way. And let me give you an example. This is where I could really see the difference, and when I really started to shape uh, my who I am and what direction I wanted to go in life. When I was in college, remember, like 800 years ago, I I went to UC Irvine, and at the time in 1994, this was, if you remember, the very beginning, the very first years of the AIDS epidemic. And, we had all just started learning about, late 80s and early 90s, what HIV was. And, remember, it was just it was like a death sentence at the time. And um, I remember our university decided to offer a course about HIV and AIDS. And the first half of the course, like the first 4 or 5 weeks of the semester, were going to be about the biology of AIDS. And that's what the first half of the semester was called. And so that first half was basically like being in a pre-med class, like where you're learning, which to me was just like excruciating.
I can imagine.
I
Yeah.
just, but we learned about, very clinical effects of what is HIV, how does the virus attack the body, what other diseases does it spawn in the body, what it was all just very about the science of it, okay, which was interesting. At times I felt like you know, this is something maybe for med students or pre-med students, maybe they should be in here. But I understood the importance of the second half of the course, the last 5 weeks, which was the social impact
Right.
of HIV and AIDS. So what they did was teach us the mechanics of what it was, which many people would probably say was boring and excruciating to try to absorb and at least pass a test, right? If you weren't very interested in it or interested in the medical field. But the second half, I think I spent those last 5 weeks in the entire auditorium of students in that class, like crying off and on for 5 weeks because these were the human impact stories. These were now taking the effects of what was happening biologically that we learned about and what was happening to people in their personal lives, in their relationships, navigating the healthcare system, how they were dying of other diseases, and it was actually showing what their day-to-day lives were like, and watching and people allowing the cameras to be there as they go through this process of dying.
Wow.
And to me, that's the connection. I don't think anyone could have cared as much except for being scared out of their minds about what HIV was when it first, came out and started to become known to the public. It was those human impact stories and those stories where you could actually see how it affected families, children, parents, everybody, that I said that's the connection I want to have. Those are the stories I want to tell. So I, that's what I mean by the human connection. If you don't have the human connection, in my opinion, and tell those kinds of stories, whether it's impactful like that, emotional, or entertaining in a way, and like in a game show format where we teach about NFTs or something, because we have a whole slate of show ideas for ways to teach people, shows to be produced to teach people about stuff in this space and about, the metaverse and augmented reality and all that kind of stuff. But if you can't show that stuff in action and make a connection with people, it's really kind of pointless to me, because you can't, if you don't make people care and you don't show them a way they can understand and connect to, I really feel like you lose, you lost.
Yeah, no,
That's a very good point. Yeah.
I agree. I've come from a hospitality background, so having, human connection is very important, and that's kind of what we're trying to do with our company in terms of technology and hospitality, and using technology to bring hospitality into this new world that we're going to be living in, that doesn't have as much personal hospitality, because of COVID and
Right.
restrictions and contactlessness. But we look to improve on that and still allow for that genuine hospitality to shine through, even though it may be technologically done, not necessarily face to face. But another question I had is, have you considered using a blockchain or creating a blockchain to ensure that any reports or newscasts that you do aren't tampered with or can be relied upon? As we talk about decentralization and trust, with what blockchain's all about, have you put any thought into maybe turning a report into an NFT and getting that onto a blockchain, or just getting reports batched onto a blockchain somehow, so you can say you're the truly decentralized in a way where it can't be tampered with once you guys put it out there?
Of course. I mean, those are the discussions absolutely that we have to have. But, when you present it like that, right, you can see the endless possibilities. So as eager and as much as we want to just jump here and there and do all those things, I have to keep reminding myself that we've got to take the baby steps. But absolutely, I mean, that would be in the entire spirit of what we're trying to do and how we're trying to help people learn, in addition to creating a company. So yes, that has absolutely been in the discussions, and I think we really need to evolve to that. But absolutely.
Interesting. So those are the only questions I had, but I did want to kind of just recap and kind of agree and touch on some of the things that we talked about. In the beginning, you were saying, it's all like you were very upset with the traditional journalism and what was going on. And I myself was the same back around that same time in the late, 2000s, 2008, 2010, when the whole financial crisis happened. I was just entering the workforce and watching news just change, and kind of, I guess you'd call misinformation, led me down the rabbit hole of going to alternative news and just ditching Cablevision and using, my Apple TV and streaming services. I was one of the first people to do that back, when Apple TV first came out. I said, why do I need Cablevision? I can just watch what I want when I want to. And YouTube became big for me, getting news from YouTube and alternative sources. So around that same time, that's kind of what led me to Ron Paul and his, mentioning liberty and Bitcoin and what blockchain is. So it's, kind of the news and the frustration of traditional news and how it was covered, where it was just shock value. There was nothing with substance. It was all, we've turned to instant news where we're just scrolling now, and that's how the news we get. And that's what you were seeing on national television, was just story after story of 30-second clips of fluff and and wow, and no really follow-up, or it was just,
or the story.
I understand where you were coming from, and I just relate with why you decided to create this media company, so hats off for that.
Well, thank you. But you brought up a great period in history, which was, 2008 and the collapse, the financial bubble. I think that was an epiphany for a lot of people to finally see just what was under the surface and how things are, and how the economy works, at least in the United States, and what thin ice we're all standing on. And, I think that was the beginning of where we are now, in my opinion. That really was a big wake up call, hopefully for a lot of people, about how fragile our economy is, and who really benefits from the way we are run and who doesn't. And I would say that's, for me, was also a big wake up call, because I was just one of those other people too. Like, I've got my career, I'm putting money in my 401k, everything's going to be fine. And I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And I'm, going to have money for retirement. And I was financially illiterate, despite what I did for a living. And, I fell into that same routine that everybody else does at one point, maybe, or another. And that was really scary for a lot of people.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Wow, absolutely. And like I said, that's what kind of led me down this road to, and blockchain, was that alternative media, because they're not talking about it in traditional media. You can't, at least positively, they're just talking about the price. That's the only thing that they'll talk about. So you had talked about, new technology, and it's all about education, and that's what you're doing, and telling stories and educating people in a way where it's not so technical, where nobody understands the internet, but they understand how to use Facebook.
Right.
It's the same thing. I feel like me and Adam and our team, we're trying to develop applications that are easy to use, like Facebook, that are so intuitive that you don't even know you're using a blockchain. So, education is a big part, but also just creating tools that make it so easy and intuitive and effortless for people to use it, that they don't even have to question or know the technical aspect of it. They can hear the stories and how it's going to benefit them in positive ways, just like the internet's positively, and affected the whole world. It's the same thing with blockchain. They don't necessarily need to know the technicalities. They just need to know they have a pretty app that works and gives them what they need when they want it.
Ultimately, you're right. So
yeah,
right.
I'm same.
People just want to know, does it work? What does it do for
Yeah.
me? Oh, this
And we
is
were
all I
talking
need to
about,
do. Great.
criminals, and it was the same thing with the internet. Like when people didn't understand the technology in the mid 90s and early 2000s, it was for porn and scammers and everything like that, because they didn't understand it. And then fast forward 10 years where there's an application that makes communication easy, fun, and intuitive. They don't have to understand the hacking part of it. They just need to understand that it makes their lives easier and more efficient. And
I agree.
in terms of starting a company, I'm right there with you. I worked in hospitality my entire life, 20 years in restaurants and hotels. And when I decided to start a company, my parents, they still, until they see the app working in somewhere, they're just not going to believe it. Just like your parents aren't, until they see the show going 24/7. It's just hard for them to break out of their old, school. I mean, I've helped my parents with Bitcoin, and they understand that, but in terms of, what blockchain can do besides just increasing your wealth and a store of value, besides the store of value aspect of Bitcoin, they really don't understand blockchain, the technology. And I think it's when we start building those applications and building those things where they can use it without having to know about it, is when they're going to be like, oh, okay, now I get it. Just like when your parents are going to be like, oh, this is what people, people want to see this thing. You're telling a story about something that's so technologically driven, but you're able to personalize it and make it humane, where people can understand it and understand the benefits and the liberty and freedom it has to bring to the planet. So I'm right there with you with starting a company. It's very rewarding to do things your own, but it's a very difficult path as well.
Don't get me wrong. They have supported me in every way. I mean, right now, they are a safety net, and so they're like, you better pull this off. No pressure, right? But every once in a while,
it's if you do what you feel is right in your heart, you can never go wrong, I feel. And I think that what you're doing and trying to bring and educate people and tell these stories in a way where they can understand it, where they don't need to know what Solidity is, what the different programming languages are. They just know that they have a technology that can bring them freedom and efficiency and liberty across all of these different sectors, just the same way the internet has. It's just a general purpose technology. It can be used for just about anything, as long as developers are building those applications. And, I think that that's where we're heading. I think we're at the internet of the late 90s, kind of heading into the 2000s, where, everybody's going to be using Facebook soon, and everybody's going to start using all of these applications that bring them, financial freedom, ease of healthcare records. I mean, you name it. Real estate, you could go into any industry with this. And an untapped industry that me and Adam are working on are the small businesses and the hospitality and service sector that gets overlooked. It got destroyed during COVID, but there's a lot of rebuilding that needs to be done for these small businesses. And I think that giving them a platform and allowing them to digitize their services and what they do, and bring them up to speed with the technology that's just moving 10 times faster. If you look at a corner store pizzeria, it's really hard for them to build an app, to do marketing online. And if you can build an application for somebody that can do a lot of those things for them, so they can focus on making the pizza and taking care of the customers, rather than trying to figure out how they can market to people that are and create and get new customers. And because if you're not doing that nowadays, you're just going to get left in the dust. And a lot of mom and pop places have gotten left in the dust by Panera Breads and McDonald's and all these, instant food options that people want nowadays. Just like they want the instant news, they want the instant food, they want it right away because everybody's in a rush, that we forget about the small businesses that we're ignoring, that that are cornerstones of our culture and our neighborhoods and our communities. And those are the things that we are all so busy with the news, and when things settle in a few years and we're walking around, when we go back out and there's no masks, hopefully, and all of this, and half of the stores that you remember are gone and they're replaced with all of these, big box name stores where, everything is you're ordering on the screen, it's coming out of a machine, and you're like, it's kind of like, it takes the humanity and the hospitality out of it. And I think that, offering what we're building and things like that you're building to make people understand that this is a technology that can make things more efficient and help, rather than this is not a technology for hackers, which is basically hackers or just sucking energy. It's just like when I talk to friends or people that don't understand it, it's like, oh, that's what hackers use, or that doesn't use as much energy as a country, because that's all the mainstream news will tell them, because it's, again, you go down that alternate news route, and there's reasons for it on the back end. But I commend you for what you're doing. I think that the idea of crypto entertainment is awesome, because that's, everybody loves entertainment. Everybody loves to be entertained and will wind through a long day and watch something that's not so, like you said, it's the shock value or a car chase or the robbery that just went on, or something that's like so negative after negative after negative. And then, oh, let's just throw in a fluff story here to make it like we're not just bombarding you with like all negativity. So I think what you're doing is great. I can't wait to see it come to life and see what you do and the people that you have on. I'm really excited for you, and I'm glad that you came on to speak with us, and thank you so much. And hopefully, once you start, or in 6 months or 3 months, once you're getting going, we'd love to have you come back on and hear some more of like how it's going and some of the positives, some of the negatives, and it's great to hear different stories from around the industry. And that's why we created PiñaTalks, was to also educate and create and network with all of these like-minded individuals to ensure that it spreads like wildfire. The more you can pollinate more minds, the more people understand it, and the more it gets accepted.
Absolutely. And you guys, the same to you. Hats off to you for taking that leap of faith and taking a risk. It's a huge risk. Sometimes I think, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. What am I doing? But then I think sometimes this is the greatest thing ever. Why not? You have one life, and I'm alive, so let's do it. I go back and forth, I'm sure, as you guys know too. So hats off to you for trying to build as well. And again, my pleasure being here. It's been just a joy talking with you guys, and if we can support each other in any way we can, I'm happy to help.
Yes, of course.
Absolutely. And I did have one more question. Is when SentTV expands, becomes bigger, are there any guests, any mainstream figures in blockchain and cryptocurrency that you would like to have on the show and interview and get to know?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I definitely would like to have, beyond celebrity, because obviously celebrities, the easy route, right? You want to, people go for the celebrities, but I also think that some of the people like you guys who are building from
thank you.
the ground up, and have come from these diverse backgrounds, that explains why and how they're here today, are just as inspiring, because that shows a little bit more of a connection with people. That here I am interviewing this person who maybe was working 9 to 5, just like the person watching the show, and now they're building a company that shows that they can do it too. When you see celebrities doing all this cool stuff, it's great, and every little bit helps to draw attention to this industry. That somehow that just seems out of touch for most people. Like, yeah, but they're celebrities, so this is easy for them. Let's show the struggles of what it takes and what it took.
Mhm.
One of the best stories I ever saw about something like that was on 60 Minutes about the founder of Chobani. You guys can go look it up, but his story was incredible and captivating, and just a tribute to the human spirit and dedication and love, and go check it out. But those are
I'll
the kinds
definitely
of
check it out. Sure.
those are the kinds of stories and the people that I really would like to talk to as well. Hopefully a mix, but it can't just be all celebrities, because that's as exciting sometimes as people find their lives and what they're doing in day to day. It's just not a reality for everybody.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And on an ending note, is there some sort of inner compass or some sort of guiding philosophy that you have, whether it was, accomplishing what all you have in journalism, or even pursuing SentTV and what it will become? Is there some sort of motto or theme or some sort of philosophy, personal philosophy that guides you and that powers you in what you do?
I don't have like a mantra per se, like this, something that, maybe an intention, a different intention set every day. It's really just, it's just kind of what my parents taught us. My parents are extremely hardworking people. My dad was in the Navy and went to school on the GI Bill. And, my parents, I would say, are just salt of the earth people. And they lived very simply. They live, with those philosophies, simple philosophies, work hard, quit your complaining and crying. Like nobody wants to hear it. And don't screw people over. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really, that's it. I mean, my parents just had just very simple rules, and they weren't religious. They aren't by any means. They totally rejected organized religion, and we never went to church or anything like that growing up. But they certainly instilled a lot of values in us that that they deserve credit for, and those were the basic rules.
Awesome. Well, I have to say, Elsa, it was an absolute pleasure having
Yes.
you come on as a guest today. I learned so much about SentTV. I got to really understand the nuances and, really the substance of your backstory. And I'm very excited for SentTV and what it has in store over the next few months and into 2022. And we hope to see you at Bitcoin 2022 as well. So
We plan on being there.
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, as do we. And again, thank you so much for coming on today. I do have some more questions. I'll send those to you offline though. But this was an absolute pleasure. I had an absolute great time speaking with you and
Thank you.
finding out more about SentTV. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing what you all have
Me
in
too.
store for us.
Yes.
Same here, guys. Take care, and thank you for everything.
You have a great day.
Thank you as
so
well.
much for coming on.
You too.
Thank you so much, Elsa.
Bye, guys.
Bye.